This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. In each episode, we bring you information, insights, and ideas from some of the industry's top thought leaders. Connect with us to help pick the topic and guide the show.
This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. I'm your host, Jamie Wood. I'm excited to bring you a pretty different format today. If you are that astute of a listener, you can probably hear that it sounds a bit echoey in this room. I'm not in my studio, I'm actually in my home office, because today we're going to be hearing a live recording of a coaching session with a Media Sales Mastery listener. Now, Ben is joining us from beautiful New Zealand. He works in media sales as well as running his own independent media buying and placement service. He and I connected via the podcast. We've already spent an hour on a Zoom call previously, working through some of his areas of focus for the year ahead. And I asked him to actually participate in another coaching session because I just thought this would be an interesting thing to kind of do. Ben very much leans into the content we do on Media Sales Mastery. He's very candid about always wanting to gain that incremental edge. He's been in the game a long time, but, feels like he's a constant learner. And I just thought he'd be a great person to get on the podcast, run through some of his tactical areas, give him some practical advice or some solutions or some things to consider. Now, I don't profess to be the expert, but I certainly love talking shop about media sales. I'm a bit of a nerd that way, so I'm really keen to jump into this one. And if you are interested in participating in this type of thing in future, it's something I can't do a lot of. I just don't have a lot of time, but please feel free to reach out to me if you do want to jump on a call, because I am really keen to hear what are some of those challenges you're facing in media sales that might better inform the podcast. And as I always say, you pick the topic, you guide the show, or in this instance, you're part of the show. So thanks, Ben. We're going to jump in right now. G'day, Ben.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for doing this. This is a bit of a unique approach to the podcast. First time we've done a live coaching session, and you were brave enough to put your hand up. So thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
No, it's great. Honestly, I love listening to the podcast, and it's good to be involved.
Sweet as. Well, tell us just a bit of context about you. So tell us about your background in media, your current role, and what caused you to actually seek out the podcast as well.
I mean, I've been in New Zealand now for 13 years. I came over to play rugby in North Otago, moved to Dunedin with my family, and worked a little bit in Les Mills, and then had the opportunity to work for the local newspaper, the ODT. And one of our clients had an opportunity. His wife was the general manager at MediaWorks. And from there was an opportunity as a kind of an account manager for MediaWorks in Dunedin, in Otago. And yeah, there was a few ums and ahs. It was a full commission role, but I'm pretty hungry. And yeah, I think for me it was kind of like, let's jump in. I love the media landscape. And from there, I've now been with MediaWorks for 10 years. I started a small kind of boutique agency wanting to help other clients with other solution-based campaigns, whether that was out of home, radio, digital, TV, even social media and creative. And so that's kind of been the last kind of 12, 13 years in media. I love media. It's different every single day. I've got great clients across New Zealand. I'm a national account manager now. And listening to your podcast, kind of listening to things that you talk about, how you put them, even in your LinkedIn. I'd listened to a couple, one with my good friend Roy Hawker. And that's when I reached out and just thought to myself, let's have a chat, see if there's anything that we can kind of hit off. And yeah, that's, I guess, how this kind of whole training program started.
Beautiful, mate. Well, that's great to hear. And it's exactly the reason the whole podcast was actually started. So, mate, music to my ears. So in terms of this, I'm not someone who's done a lot of these. I think I've done about 9 or 10 coaching sessions with people who are listeners of the podcast, and I've really enjoyed it because for me, I get to get an understanding of what are some of those challenges at the coalface for people who are selling media. What in your world is kind of keeping you up at night, mate? What's something that you thought we could cover off to make the most of our time today?
I think being in the game for 10 years, as most media kind of account managers or solution sellers, that they kind of get into a little bit of a plateau. And so I had very strong growth in that first kind of 6 to 7 years. We were picking up new clients. It wasn't easy, but it was very rewarding, when you were able to, work with clients and partner with them and put together solutions that actually worked. COVID hit, a few things had changed, and I'm always looking to find new kind of initiatives of selling. And one of the things I wasn't lacking motivation, but I was just like, how do I pick up an edge? How do I try and get 1% better every day and find something to keep my prospecting a little bit different, more on point going forward? So reaching out to you, it was more around, how do I find a missing link? What are you doing in, at oOh!media, or how are you doing different things with your salespeople? I love learning. And so the training session allowed us to kind of talk through that. And I picked up some amazing nuggets, which now I'm using within my day-to-day. And the other thing would probably be time management. As you get busier, what's crucial, what's not crucial, and am I doing things more ad hoc? Should I be delegating? What should I be kind of concentrating on?
Yeah, cool. Okay, so basically, yeah, we did have a brief chat, because I think you said, not that you were stale, but you were sort of saying you've been doing it a while now, your prospecting chops, you back yourself are pretty good, you've got good habits, but you were looking for some new and different ways to engage the market and expand your customer base, which I'm keen to unpack that more. And then the other one was just around, use of time. So like just doing an audit of where you're spending your time and energy and what's high leverage, high return versus what probably could be deleted or automated or gotten rid of. Let's kick into the new business piece, because New Zealand is a tight market, I would imagine, in terms of client opportunity and big national advertisers. Well, what are some of the kind of challenges with uncovering or prospecting new business that you're having?
I think there's a lot of emphasis around bigger companies potentially going with agencies, full service agencies. And I guess from my point of view, how do you get past the gatekeeper, or how do you find businesses that actually I can help? And then how do I actually help them? And how do I find that particular in and come up with a solution for them where they can, actually, listen and find it valuable?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think that's a good call. I mean, some of the things about prospecting at the moment that I reckon everyone's finding hard, and this is myself and my team included, is we don't have that landline to call through to as much with COVID. Does that make sense? Like, it used to be that you call a main switch and your whole job was to get through to the gatekeeper, through the decision maker. And often that felt like a fairly straightforward kind of approach. You had to do a lot of calls, but where I think things have shifted and where I see a lot of reps having some challenges at the moment is people are working remotely. Not everyone has a landline to their office anymore. People don't broadcast their mobile numbers on LinkedIn. A lot of like major companies, even where I've been calling in trying to get a meeting with a CMO, for example, you get an automated messaging service. So the best you can do is leave a voicemail and hope they call you back, which they don't. Is that a similar thing you're finding? It's harder to kind of connect through to those contacts?
Yeah, I think so. And we all know that we're personable. We want to get in front of these people, and it's getting harder and harder. A lot of people's time is spent doing other things. And so even in this landscape, I guess for me, like, they're doing multiple jobs within the business, right? So how do you actually get in front of these people? And you're dead right. It's getting harder and harder with these automated ways of trying to get into the business.
Do you reckon the clients are a little bit more resistant to devoting their time to a meeting? Are you finding that it's harder to get them to sit down with you for an hour?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you don't directly get in front of these people, or, it's the odd, just send an email. I haven't got time. I don't know who you are. All of a sudden those barriers go up, and, how do you then capitalize on that to get the meeting? I would imagine a lot of people would be coming across facing these challenges.
I think you're right. Like, it definitely feels like a different environment in the last couple of years in terms of just people's time and energy. Maybe that's a consequence of the last couple of years where, certain workforces might be running a little bit leaner than they were before. There is obviously the whole thing of skills shortages. I think businesses in general are just watching their money a lot tighter. They're running a lot more of a streamlined operation after COVID. And maybe, I get the sentiment that a lot of marketing managers or business managers, they don't necessarily have the bandwidth to devote that much time to you. And maybe they're probably on the receiving end of a lot of similar prospecting calls from a lot of media and or other kind of suppliers trying to kind of book time with them too.
It's 100%. How do I stand out? These guys, on average, are probably getting 7-8 marketing calls a week.
Wow. Okay.
MediaWorks has got a very strong name in New Zealand, as does our competition. So you might get the phone call, but then what is it that I offer different? And, being in it for like 10 years, I've found different ways. I've got a good sales process, but it's more that off the cuff, how do I talk to these people to engage with them? And Roy Hawker brought that up quite nicely in terms of once you get to that point, go in with your empty vessel. Don't sell your can of Coke, but it's more the fact, how do you actually get into there? And the other thing is who should I be targeting? Who, for me, I'm kind of going, well, what industries do I want to work with? And how do I approach that? So I've got a story to tell.
Yeah, that's a really good call, because the whole premise used to be, it was like, you uncover a need, you go and run your uncovery discovery meeting, and then you come back with the solution. And if clients aren't willing and able to devote that time to give you, that background and context on their business to go and work it up, it becomes a lot harder, doesn't it? It's almost like there's a feeling like you've got to kind of show value in that first interaction or even on that first phone call in order to warrant the meeting. So yeah, okay. Well, mate, that feels to me very, very common with what a lot of people are sort of saying across the board. I would say the main thing that I'm sort of trying to get my head around here is it a case of just trying to differentiate the way that we pitch when we get on those calls? Or is it like there's some different outreach channels or some different strategies that we need to put in place across the board, to go and sort of connect in with some different clients that maybe aren't getting those 7-8 calls a week?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. The good thing is you've been in the game, you've managed people, and so you've probably seen it. And Australia is a great market as well that, there's lots of things happening. And so for me, it's like, well, what is it that I am pitching? And then what is my difference to these other people that may be working within the businesses?
Yeah, definitely. Well, what do you think is your point of difference, if I can ask? So they're getting called by a lot of people. Of the clients that you are getting the meetings with and having success with, what are they telling you is sort of cutting through or resonating? Or what is your unique sort of value prop?
The product knowledge that I've had, the experience, I feel like I'm reasonably approachable. I do dig quite deep into the person I'm dealing with, the business, doing my research. And so that first initial kind of 3 to 5 minutes, I feel like I can actually engage with them and keep them listening, whereas sometimes you get to that point where you're like, oh, I'm losing them here. And why am I losing them? And I've dug pretty deep into finding different ways and different methods. And, I don't so much script, but I will have a lot of stuff in front of me, which will hopefully indicate, what I'm trying to offer or just trying to get to know about the business. So I've done my research beforehand. So I would say they are my strengths. But it's then moving to that next step. How do I get the appointment, right? That's the hardest thing is, well, have I done enough to actually get in front of you? Because, face-to-face meetings for me is where I would probably excel in that area.
That makes a lot of sense. Like, I think there's probably the two strategies that I think work really well at the moment for outbound prospecting. And I don't know if you could implement this in your market, but one of the ones that we've been sort of putting into place lately has been, rather than sort of trying to sell an uncovery meeting, we've actually been hosting some smaller client events that we've been sort of prospecting clients to try and invite them along to an event. And so the event could be quite small. It could be a lunch. In our business, it's great because we can do sort of miniature, like walking site tours. So like Brisbane Airport is a great example of having a nice lunch at the airport, taking them for a tour. But that really removes a lot of the friction when it comes to actually outbound prospecting. So tell you what, let's do a bit of a role play right now. So you're the gatekeeper. I'm calling in. and I'll show you, and I want to get through to somebody you don't want to put me through to. Let me just demonstrate exactly what that kind of sell would be. So ring.
Hello.
Hi there, it's Jamie Wood calling for Dan Smith.
Oh, Dan's actually unavailable at the moment. Sorry.
No, that's okay. My name's Jamie Wood. I'm from X company. I really need to actually speak to him. It's quite time sensitive. We've got a great event that he's invited to. I just need to confirm his RSVP. Would he be available for a quick minute?
Well, actually, let me just check and see if he's available.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dan is available. I'll just fire you through now.
Okay, thank you. So now you can be Dan.
Hey, Dan speaking.
Hi, Dan. Jamie Wood calling from X Media. How you doing?
I'm good, Jamie. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, mate. Hey, listen, you weren't expecting my call. Let me give you a quick 20 seconds as to why I wanted to reach out to you, and then you can let me know if it's worth us continuing to chat. Is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
Great. So listen, I'm the state sales director of this company. We are putting an event on for mostly B2B marketers, and we're really targeting ASX listed companies in this market. Mate, your name's come up from a few people as someone we should connect in with. We're hosting this event on the 23rd. I'd really like to get yourself and a representative along. Can you let me know, how does that look in your calendar, mate? Would you be free for that? It's a couple of hours.
Yeah, there's a few things going on that day, but I might be able to shift things around. What is it that you're looking to offer, Jamie?
Sure. So look, we have a number of different products, but specifically we're going to be showcasing our enterprise network, which is a network of airport advertising and inner office advertising, connecting with C-suite business professionals, very much aligned to what I imagine your kind of customer profile is, and was also just curious to see what's happening in your sector, mate. It's a marketplace we're doing increasing amounts of work in. Does that sound like something that is top of mind for you guys at the moment, is connecting in with that particular C-suite or business professional audience?
Yeah, we are always looking for new clientele and anything to try and get into that market and continue to grow our brand. Then absolutely, yeah.
So you're a very friendly we'll stop the role play. You're a very friendly person to role play with there, mate. But that's sort of the strategy.
I was thinking about how
how to make it hard.
Yeah, that for me, the event-based thing, it's a soft sell as well. Do you has that been working well with your clients?
Yeah, it has. I mean, it's ideally, I'm not going to say the word bait and switch, but it's ideally what it is it's just a soft way to get the introduction. So let's say you said no, right? No, I'm not free on that date. I don't want to go to an event. I'm too busy. Totally respect that. Look, it was just fortuitous the event was happening. The real reason I wanted to connect with you is I think we've got a really interesting opportunity that I'd love to take you through. And then you can actually sort of go into your pitch and ideally try to get a coffee meeting or a face-to-face meeting with them from there.
You would be able to kind of get an appointment on his own, right? Which I guess is the ultimate. Yeah. But if you can get them to the event, at least you can spend some time with him as well. That's probably the initial win, right?
Yeah, that's right, mate. And I think the thing that's also really kind of key there is clients. Maybe it's just a Brisbane thing. It's a very friendly market where I live, but the chance to connect with other business leaders or other business owners or other marketing managers is always a nice opportunity. I think being able to have a peer level kind of meeting together, it's an easier sell. And particularly if you can drop a few clients who might be adjacent to their industry. So if we were targeting an ASX listed company, and maybe it's a business to business client that we're going for in this scenario, I would try and think of a couple of clients that have a bit of reputation that we also work with, and sort of we're also doing some work with this client and this client who we know are not exactly the same as your business, but they're in your sector. Would love to connect you in with them. Maybe there's a chance for you to meet and discuss some things. So it's a soft sell, but ultimately what it does is it at least piques the interest. And the mechanism that I was trying to sort of deploy there with you was also going if you had to say, look, yeah, no, it doesn't really sound like for us. It's go, look, I hear that. I mean, it's just an event, mate, and you don't have time it sounds like you're quite busy and you don't have time just to spend a couple of hours out at a lunch. Let me tell you the reason why I still think we should meet.
Yeah. I mean, that does make a lot of sense to me. It's something that you do get a lot of pushback quite a bit of the time from people, because the other thing is they probably don't know you personally. And so my other question is do you think, Like, do you need to tell do you need to tell Dan more about Jamie Wood and who you are, or do you try to get to the point straight away about why you're calling? Because they've got no time, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to be respectful of my employer, oOh!media, here, because I didn't want to sort of give my carbon copy product pitch. But I'd usually have a pretty good valid business reason that would be really tailored to whatever product suite I'm trying to pitch at that time. So, I mean, in my radio days, when I was selling things like esports, when I was selling podcasts, you've always got to have a pretty pinpointed valid business reason. And I think, that was what I was curious about. In your world, I would imagine you're selling a pretty diverse product suite, and you've got a whole bunch of different opportunities. You've almost got something for everyone, if you will.
Yeah, and that actually, I see that as a plus and a negative, because I might be going to you for 2 or 3 different channels, but they might only need one, or I might go to them with one and they actually might need all 4 or 5. And so, I guess that's kind of like, do I go into those conversations with an idea or a perception that I'm actually going to pitch radio to this client, or I'm going to pitch and unearth actually what they want more than what I feel they need?
What do you typically favour? So you normally sort of think, what's the lead channel I can sell, and you sort of lead with that, or?
I mean, if I do the research, I will try to be as broad as possible, but I will mention to the client most of the products that we would sell if I get to that point of the conversation. Whereas I guess you trying to sell an event, I'm not trying to sell you that can of Coke straight away.
Yeah.
So, we've been quite radio dominated, but we've now brought in out of home, which is extremely successful. And I've seen great results from clients that are using that media. And then there's obviously that digital element as well. So you try to tread carefully around all of them, but by the end of that discovery meeting, or if you get the appointment, I guess it's like, well, we've narrowed it down.
That's a good call, mate. I think where it can really help in those scenarios, when you've almost got you've got so much relevant opportunity, leading with the hero product that you think's most relevant. And then if they balk, it's a good strategy. I'd say the other thing that can work really well there is just thinking about if there's a commonality to the audience that all those channels reach. Could you make an argument? Let's say you're calling an FMCG brand, and you're prospecting them, or a fast food brand or something. You could probably make the argument that that there's a really relevant audience that you reach across all your platforms. So maybe something to the effect of, it's Ben here. Understand, actually trialed your product the other day, or sampled your product the other day. I think it's fantastic. Based on what I observed in the grocery aisle, it seems like your core consumer group is very much kind of that, 25 to 54 grocery buyer kind of mass market. Would I be totally wrong in that assumption? Oh, look, not really our core audience. We typically go here. Okay, great. Well, that's actually really interesting. I've got I represent media assets across this, and this, and they're highly complementary, but one of our sort of primary audiences that we reach is actually grocery buyers. I'd love to come and talk to you more about how we could help with your objectives.
So would you dial in on maybe 4 to 5 companies in the same industry and have very similar strategies?
Yeah, I really think that's the most efficient way to prospect. I wouldn't say I do it all the time. I think there's kind of 3 or 4 ways you can prospect. One is the category approach. So you just go, I'm just going to hit the insurance category. Let me tell you the reason why that's good. One, you get to do a really kind of punchy elevator pitch that you can then just continue to repurpose for every call, so you don't have to go and create a new pitch. 2, you can actually really maximize the quality of every interaction, because what you can kind of say is, let's say we're talking on I'm prospecting you. You go, look, mate, our media set, we're not really a big spender. We have an agency. We do this, we do that. I don't really want a meeting with you. It's like, okay, no worries. Look, I'm actually just trying to understand your category better. Tell me, what's the seasonality? When do you typically get busy? And they'll tell you that, right? People like to talk about their own category. And you go, okay, cool. Thank you for that. Next call. Hey, it's Ben here. Look, I'm talking to a number of insurers. I understand your key period of demand is January, February for these reasons, right? So you can see how your pitch just becomes a little bit slicker and a little bit more tailored with every call. So I think it's a really good way to prospect. I think the other way to prospect that can be really good is to actually just divulge the type of client you're targeting and why. One of the things we're trying at the moment, which is a slow burn, but it's working really well, is we're connecting in with every ASX listed company that has a headquarters in our market. And I'm saying that on the calls. Look, we just want to have a relationship with you. We know you're ASX listed. We know you're headquartered here. We're a large operator in this market. We deal with all the marquee advertisers. We might say a few big national clients just to show the cred. I just think it would be great for us to introduce our companies, see if there's an opportunity for us to work together. Sometimes that approach of just full transparency can really work.
That's smart, yeah. So you'd look down the list of the ASX and find because a lot of these companies being B2B, sometimes they feel like my experience would be that they would try to be real targeted with a digital strategy or a industry magazine, and they don't quite think about what their actual values or sustainability or brand, and they still need to advertise and tell their story. And in New Zealand, that's big at the moment.
Yeah, mate, totally. Like you and I spoke about this on the last call, where you were saying, look, I want to refresh my revenue profile, and I want to find a way to cut through the clutter of all these other reps calling on the same clients. And the approach of looking at some of these companies that are just big employers, or have a real strong presence, they might not be the most obvious category for mainstream media, but they all have a brand, they all have PR budgets, they all have internal communications, they all have stakeholders, and they're all part of a supply chain. Many of them need to lobby the government. So they need to talk to people, right? They need to brand themselves. But it's a longer sales cycle, and there's a lot of tire kicking that happens. And it's very much about having enough understanding of their sector to be able to show some relevance. I'm calling you from a primarily radio business and you're a mining and resources company. That feels like a bit of a weird kind of prospecting call in terms of the VBR. But where you can invert that is go, we have strong ties to the community. We very much are looking to sort of connect in with civic leaders in the market. We're an influential media business with a heavy presence in this market. You're one of the largest employers in this market. We know a lot of people who listen to our audience are your employees and all your business partners and all your stakeholders. We'd love to come and show you some ideas for how we can work with your brand. But we'd love to get an understanding. Don't go down that sales cycle with the business themselves. It's more about the community or, what they are actually doing in those different areas. Yeah.
It does make a lot of sense, because I see quite a few businesses in New Zealand now, they are working on their brand sustainability and look like showing that they are doing well in the community. And even like Novus Glass at the moment, you buy a windscreen or something, they plant 2 or 3 trees. There's a fire company I know that help out in these smaller third world countries. And that would resonate, because I'm seeing it, right? I feel like not a huge amount of companies leverage all the good stuff that they are actually doing. They're just trying to get the sale, right?
You've actually nailed like the third kind of prospecting strategy there too, mate. Like it's like the beautiful thing about most media, and a lot of people think of a media product as our physical inventory, but you can actually create a product that is, I'm not going to say package because that's the wrong word, but you could create a tailored specific product or feature that you could take to the market. So, sustainability is massive in corporate Australia right now. I have no doubt New Zealand, it's probably the same, because it's a bit of a global thing. Companies are looking at their environmental footprint. They're looking at their business practices. So imagine being able to create something that is like a what's green on the scene style feature. And you could literally pick up the phone and go, hey, Ben, Jamie Wood calling from X media company. Listen, you probably weren't expecting my call. Let me tell you why I called you. One, we've created this feature called What's Green on the Scene. It's all about shining a spotlight on companies that are really progressive in that sustainability space and are putting some great initiatives in. We know that's one of the most important factors to our audience at the moment in terms of, a company's environmental footprint. they're telling us consistently that they're really demanding more from companies and they really want to see more from companies in that environmental space. So we've got a platform, a media platform that's all about showcasing companies who are doing great work. It is a paid advertising opportunity, I'll disclose that, but it also comes with a lot of earned media, and it's a great thing you can leverage across your channels. I'd love 30 minutes to take you through what it's all about, show you how we think it could work for you. Like that type of thing, again, it's just me. I have this habit of verbal diarrhea, so that's just me kind of ideating in real time. You can see how if you do this stuff enough, and I'm very lucky, I've been doing this a long time, and I could have very easily stopped prospecting when I became a sales director 9 years ago, but I've always kept the cold calling chops kind of pretty okay because it's an amazing skill to get the meetings with those high value clients if you can do it well. So just to do a quick recap, prospecting by category is very efficient. It's a great way to make your valid business reason a little tighter each time, and you can start to kind of build up a little bit of a flow and a rhythm with your calling. The next one is looking at specific type of client and just being really transparent as to why that type of client matches your organization. So the ASX listed thing, for example. And then the last one is very much, going in with that audience-led sell, whether it be here's a relevant audience we have for you across all of our assets, or here's a productized thing that we've created for the audience that you can be involved in. So sort of like a sponsorship, if you will, but it's probably making it a sponsorship that's a little bit more bespoke, based on an opportunity you see in the marketplace.
Definitely, you look at the landscape and people, as soon as you say you're from a media company, they just automatically think you're going to try and sell them something, right? And I think that what these three things, you're coming from a different angle, like these big national companies that I'm trying to target. I would love another 3 or 4 national clients, different industries or the same industry, but you're going in with something that they probably haven't thought of before.
That's right.
Yeah. I'll definitely be doing those 3 things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's easier said than done too, though, mate. I'm really cognizant that when we're sort of sitting here doing theoreticals, sometimes when you go and field test these things, they really don't land. But those are sort of 3 outbound strategies that I've seen really work to great effect at the moment. Because to that point earlier where you say clients are time poor, they're probably getting a lot of generic calls. They don't want to volunteer an hour, of their time just to give you the tools to come back and sell them something. Having that value prop of get them to an event, have a tailored opportunity ready to go, give them a little bit of an insight into what's happening in their category, like those types of things that are all about just creating that sort of reason for them to want to lean in. Because no CMO, no marketing manager or business owner, likes to hear that their competitors are outmaneuvering them. And I think that's probably the biggest hook that you can use out of everything is if you've worked in this space and you have a familiarity with how the clients in that market operate. You don't share anything commercially sensitive because that's not ethical, but you can speak broadly to what other players are doing that they might not be doing that might create a missed opportunity for them. I find that's a great way to really get those meetings and to cut through the clutter of everyone else with their generic pitch.
Yeah, I agree.
Sweet. So that was the first one. You're saying how do we sharpen the outbound prospecting? And the next one I think you said was time management and usage of time, which is, I want to call out, I reckon this is a great thing that you're calling this out because you struck me as someone who's actually very disciplined and actually very good with time management and structure. I know you've got your goals board above your desk, and you've got your habits and all that. So for someone like yourself, who's obviously quite conscientious, to say that you're still looking at time management is really encouraging. What specifically are you sort of thinking at the moment? Is it an issue with selling versus admin? Is it just doing an audit of some habits you want to snap? When you say time management, what do you sort of mean?
I would say admin versus time in front of clients. I think it's crucial. I'm much better off being in front of a client for an hour than potentially doing admin after the fact. Is it valuable? Could I delegate? Just the concentration and just keeping myself on task. Concentrating on this is the task. I'm not moving on till I finish it. And that kind of sales versus admin is definitely something I need to keep improving, which will make me more worthwhile in the sales force.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because there is a certain amount of administrative work that comes as your revenue increases too, isn't there? Like,
well, I don't know a salesperson who's good at admin, a good salesperson who's good at who doesn't like admin.
Yeah,
and I'd rather be in front of a client for an hour than spending an hour or 2 hours in front of the computer doing labor-intensive tasks, right?
Yep. Are there particular times where the admin burden is really noticeable? Like, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, like, when does it feel like the admin's starting to take a disproportionate amount of time?
I mean, what I've tried to do, mate, is look at getting my meetings in the morning, right? When I'm fired up, I've done my ice bath, I've had my coffee, I'm ready to go, and I feel like I'm probably more. I've got better clarity, and I can really fire up. And then it gets to maybe lunchtime if I've done my fasting and go to the gym, and then 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I try to block out maybe an hour or two to do admin, but I get sidetracked into something that's happened or come, because you have to be very reactive. It's kind of those afternoons where I'd like to do the admin, but it just doesn't happen sometimes.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I'm sure I talk for most salespeople.
Yeah, no, you do. You totally do. Like, I think there's two major issues with salespeople. One is the ones that really like admin, it's almost a problem because they're really kind of not focusing on revenue generating activities when they do it. And the other is people who really struggle with delegation. They're almost like control freaks, or they don't feel particularly confident with delegating or managing people in the sales support team. I imagine you've got a little bit of support that you get obviously in your role, but then you also run a business that requires a bit of admin just by virtue of the fact that you're sort of running a couple of operations there too. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Got a good sales support team that, a couple of really talented females, and hire someone in Christchurch who does an amazing job. But like you said, there is still times where it is critical that I can do it, because sometimes they don't know my systems, my CRM versus my manual system on keeping in touch with my client service. I really don't have time to train them on that. So it's kind of like, how do I get it so I'm the most valuable I can be throughout the whole day?
Well, you hit on an interesting point there, saying you don't have time to train them on it. I mean, if they were trained on it, like, would that be an option? Like, would they be able to be trained on it and to use it?
I think maybe by shadowing me, maybe potentially might, if she had or they had the time, then I would definitely look into training them.
Yeah, this is the first thing to consider, and I'll go back a step. There's a guy who's pretty popular on LinkedIn called Justin Welsh, and he runs a one-man business, much like you do in a sense. And his whole thing is that he's trying to maximize the revenue to his business, but he's never going to employ. He has a virtual assistant, but he doesn't want to employ staff. He doesn't want to build a workforce of 20 people. He always wants to stay as a solo operator. And so the way that he sort of approaches things is really interesting, where he goes, every Sunday I look at my calendar for the week that's just gone and I do an audit. What gave me energy? What took my energy? What shouldn't I have done? What could I have just completely deleted and it would have made no difference? What can I automate? And what can I delegate? Right? So it's a historical look, because a lot of us have the best of intentions for an ideal week, but this one is one where you have to be accountable to what your week looked like and you have to answer those questions. So again, just to recap it, what gave me energy? What took energy? What did I not have to do? What can I delete? And what can I automate or delegate? And so that's the first step in terms of just getting a really good understanding of like where those time sucks and energy sucks are, because it's like I could spend a whole bunch of time in a week doing like a particular task, but if it makes me feel exhausted for the rest of the day and it makes me not want to do admin for the afternoon, then I got to address that, right? So that's the first thing he does. The next thing he does that's really interesting is he sort of batches he batches and time blocks, right? Which I'm sure you do too. So, the analogy I use is if you've got 5 client meetings, you're not available for those meetings, right? You're not contactable. You're not on your email. You're not answering your mobile phone. You are, for all intents and purposes, you are off the grid for that hour. What I find a lot of media sales people struggle with is applying that same level of discipline to how they might do their admin, right? So it's very easy to sit in front of your inbox and go, I'm going to sit down and do, a couple of creative briefs, and I'm going to send this schedule across, and I'm going to build this proposal. And then suddenly, you get the pop-up on an email or a Teams call or a phone call. Before you know it, you've been sucked into the vortex of something urgent. It happens a lot, right? And so that's the other thing that I find can really work is people who can actually treat an internal meeting like an external meeting, meaning, treat your 1 hour admin block to do that task, put it in your calendar, turn off your email alerts, turn your phone onto airplane mode, pretend that you're in a client meeting, psychologically pretend you're in a client meeting. You wouldn't answer an email or a call or send a text in a client meeting. Something more important wouldn't just pop up in the middle that makes you cancel the meeting, except maybe an emergency, right?
Yeah, for me, that would definitely keep me zoned in because, you get, the brain these days is the distractions that are available to you. I might just look at Instagram. I got a text, I need to talk, you don't treat it like they're a client, right?
Yeah.
I get it, yeah. That's smart. Justin Welsh.
Justin Welsh, he's a great kind of case study for how to really optimize your output, right? Because his whole thing is, I want to maximize my income, but I'm not going to be one of these rise and grind guys who gets up at 4 a.m. and goes to bed at midnight. He goes, I basically want to increase my revenue return to work ratio. So I want to make as much money as possible, but I want to keep my, my output and my work very contained within Monday to Friday. And so I think it's a really cool philosophy. I think it's a great, for someone like yourself who's going how do I squeeze more out of every day? How do I make sure that everything I put my focus into is as high return as it can be? He's a really good guy to follow. And just has some really, and he comes from being a senior vice president of sales in a bunch of startups. So he's a sales guy through and through, but he's now sort of in this really unique solopreneur, he calls himself kind of space. So those would be a couple of pieces of advice. The other thing I'd say, man, that I think I've observed, I don't do it myself because I'm not really in that typical brief to PCR kind of workflow anymore, but there's certain media salespeople who are really efficient because they kind of action everything at the right time. So what I mean by that is let's say you do 6 meetings a week with new clients, and there might be a point where you go, okay, I've locked in this half day to build out the props, build out the schedules, get my rates approved, get my value approved, do all my post-sale stuff. The people I've seen who are really effective, they'll walk out of the client meeting. They'll be in their car. They'll put a call back to the office to their coordinator, and they'll do a very quick verbal rundown of the meeting. They'll get back to their desk and they'll already have a templatized, client reply. Just, hey, great to meet you. As discussed, as agreed. Boom. They lock in the follow-up meeting there. They get the workflow happening straight away. There's just no fat. There's no procrastinating. There's no delaying. It's all sort of built into that rhythm. So, it just seems to be, from my perspective, it just seems to be a really great way to do it, because then suddenly there aren't all these open circuits where there's all this admin that's out there that I've got to follow up from. It's every time I do a meeting, I just automate the next 5 steps.
And I guess if they don't reply or they don't get back to you, you kind of know it's a dead end potentially. Or if they come back to you, you know that you've done the right things. I mean, I do normally quite a few agenda emails. So if I've got a client meeting tomorrow, I'll say, hey, look, Jamie, we're meeting tomorrow. I know you've only got 45 minutes. This is the agenda. This is what we're looking like. And do you know what? It seems to be working. You get a response. You might say, oh, what coffee order are you drinking? At least you saw the email and replied back. But definitely doing things immediately, or I know there's a real estate agent down in Dunedin who uses voice memo, and she'll write notes in and maybe send it to their coordinator. So I guess at least there's ways of doing it that are going to make you more efficient.
Yeah, totally. And there's this whole notion of high return and high leverage, right? So I guess, you made a comment earlier about I don't have time to train them in the CRM. It's like, let's suppose for a moment that they were willing and able to learn the CRM. You might go, look, this is going to take me 5 hours, right? It could, let's just hypothetically, it's going to take me 5 hours to sit there and train them. Then it's going to take a couple of weeks of like having to constantly give them the feedback, having to constantly kind of check stuff. Maybe stuff's going to get done wrong. Maybe stuff's not going to get done on time. Maybe it's not going to be done the way I want it. That's going to take me like 10, 15 hours. It's like, okay, but extrapolate that saved time over 12 months. You're investing 10 hours now to potentially get yourself an hour back every week over the next 52 weeks of the year. Like, that makes a lot of sense to me, but it doesn't make sense in the moment.
Bit of pain early.
Yeah. So high leverage, right?
Yeah.
High leverage is like, how do you invest 1 and get 3 back? And it's a philosophy I try to use because I think there's such little time in anyone's day. Everyone's so busy and it's so easy to just roll up and run on adrenaline every day and just react. But if you can actually go in and say, look, I'm not working more, I'm a new dad, right? I'm not working the hours I used to work when I was 27, 28. I just can't do it unless I want to be a terrible dad and a terrible husband. So I have to put a hard stop on my day. I have to be home for those sacred hours. If I don't want to log on at 7:30 for 2 more hours, or if I don't want to have to get up at stupid o'clock in the morning, I'd rather flip it around and go, how do I get the most amount out of the hours I am in the office?
Well, yeah, and we've all been there. I think we've all been there, haven't we? I'm fed up. I used to do a lot of hours after hours, and it can hinder your family, your marriage. It's you look at your values. So if you can be way more smart and disciplined, why wouldn't you?
I reckon I'm a more efficient worker now with a hard stop on my day than I ever was before, because the tendency is you can constantly just put stuff off and you jump on and say yes to everything. If there's like a 5:30 hard deadline, I've got to be in my car out of the office at 5:30, right? To do the to do the daycare pickup. That's gonna basically dictate what I say yes and no to for the entire day. I can't go have a coffee for 20 minutes. I'm not just going to go take a call and gas bag for 45 minutes with someone else. I'm going to decide what meetings I should be in versus what meetings I shouldn't. I'm going to look at my whole week differently. So for me, I think it actually is a good sort of reframe where I go, rather than looking at how do I squeeze the most out of the week, I'm like, how do I squeeze the most out of the hours that I'm in the work mode? And how do I make sure that I protect the family time and the home time? And so the high leverage thing for me has been great because it reframes what I'm doing every week and going, where do I want to be at the end of this year? Well, these are the things that actually I need to build capability in the people around me. These are the things I need to figure out a way to just get off my plate altogether and stop doing. And these are the things that probably if I was to spend the most of my time doing, by the end of the year, I'm going to be a hell of a lot better off than if I didn't do them.
Perfect. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Well, we're coming a bit to the end here. And look, most coaching sessions, I should probably say, are usually like me sitting here just asking questions. But I think you and I have got a good rapport, and I just like I like this kind of idea of just sharing rather than me being the expert, mate. But was there anything from your perspective, I guess, that you might share as a listener of the podcast and as someone out there doing the do who's clearly trying to excel in your field? Is there anything you'd want to share with the audience, as like a key takeaway for the week?
I mean, well, for me, I'm always wanting to learn, reinvigorate myself and looking at new ways to get in front of potential clients. I think, people in the same, there is a lot of patience, right? And if you take this journey and just listening to you, what I love is just thinking, like finding new little nuggets of gold. I've got a clear process, 6-step process, but I've had to adapt that, right? And so doing things like this with you and learning from other experts and kind of like fleshing it out, having a conversation, even working with people in different industries, not just the media industry. I think, if you're in the media game at the moment, like always try to find new ways of how to get in front of a client, how to go through your process. And cause it's very reactive, you need to be able to kind of chop and change when you can. And certainly, some of those time management things I'm definitely going to look into. The 3 new ways of prospecting, like they are things that I'm going to give a go, mate, because, you know, I want to be at the top of my game and I want to be able to give my clients great solutions that is going to increase their revenue and increase their brand awareness. And if I can do that, you know, like I take little wins and, you know, I want to become that kind of go-to media expert. You still got to have the care factor, mate. I mean, I'm massive on personalities, you know, getting in front of people and offering the full package, not just being a stiff, you know, account manager. So this stuff today has definitely helped hopefully build a bit more of a jigsaw around maybe slotting some of this stuff into my day-to-day work, definitely.
Oh, that's awesome to hear, man. Well, thanks for listening to the pod. Thanks for being such an active supporter of it. And, you know, shout out to Roy Hawker, who was a previous guest, who I know is a good mate of yours. And, you know, you Kiwis do it well over there, man. I do love the New Zealand media market. There's something very cool and very entrepreneurial and very creative about the way you guys roll. So hopefully very soon I can get on a plane over there and have a couple of beers with you guys.
Yeah, mate, honestly, you're more than welcome, mate. It's been great. And, just the whole media sales mastery, I've only really been listening for the last 6 to 8 months, but you learn so much, right? And the guests you have on, they kind of inspire me, you know, and having worked with Roy and having, you know, caught up with you a couple of times, it kind of just inspires me to try and get to that next level and then help other people like you're helping me, mate. So
pay it forward. I love it, brother. Thanks, Ben.
You're welcome, mate. No worries.